Police officers arrived promptly to the gruesome crime scene.
Inverted crucifixes.
Pentagrams drawn in blood.
Signs of cannibalism. Ritualistic murder.
Even human sacrifice. Early reports suggest the massacre to be the works of a satanic cult.
In Fall River, Massachusetts, between late 1979 and early 1980, a series of gruesome murders shocked the community, sparking rumors of a satanic cult. The first victim, 17-year-old Doreen Levesque, was found brutally murdered under the bleachers of a local high school on October 13, 1979. Despite investigations, no one was ever convicted for her murder. Just weeks later, 19-year-old Barbara Raposa went missing on November 7, 1979. Her body wasn't discovered until January 1980, leading to the conviction of Andy Malte, who received life in prison for the crime. The cult's third and most disturbing murder was 22-year-old Karen Marsden, who was killed in February 1980. Marsden had been present at the murder of Levesque, which apparently terrified her so much that she decided to go to the police. On that fateful night, Marsden's head was beaten in with a rock, before cult leader Carl Drew broke her neck with his bare hands. According to cult devotee and prostitute Robin Murphy, Drew finally handed her a knife and ordered her to slit Marsden's throat. He then cut an X into Marsden's chest and used her blood to mark an X on Murphy's forehead. Finally, Drew pulled and kicked at Marsden's head until it came off. Carl Drew, a local figure connected to rumors of satanic worship, was convicted of orchestrating the murder and sentenced to life without parole. Robin Murphy, who initially testified against Drew and pleaded guilty, was sentenced to life with parole, later recanting her confession and being released in 2004.
I lied about that, yes.
The entire thing.
Correct.
She was returned to prison in 2011 for violating parole. These murders marked the early days of what became known as the Satanic Panic in America. In 1996, 16-year-old Roderick Justin Farrell developed an unhealthy obsession with vampirism. This obsession turned to delusion when he convinced himself that he was not a teenager from Kentucky, but instead a 500-year-old vampire named Visago. Deeply immersed in the role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade, Rod had formed a group of like-minded teenagers, known as the Vampire Clan. Among them was his friend Heather Wendorf, who was desperate to escape what she described as a hellish home life in Florida. Rod and his clan set out to help her run away, but their journey would soon turn deadly. On November 25, 1996, Rod and his accomplice, Scott Anderson, arrived at the Wendorf home in Eustis, Florida. Entering through the unlocked garage, they found Heather's father, Richard Wendorf, asleep on the couch. Without hesitation, Rod picked up a crowbar and bludgeoned Richard to death, crushing his skull. Moments later, Naomi Wendorf, Heather's mother, walked into the room, having just stepped out of the shower. Though Rod initially claimed he planned to spare her, his rage overtook him when she threw hot coffee at him. Rod would then beat her to death with the same crowbar, leaving both parents lifeless in their home. Meanwhile, Heather and two other girls from the clan had been waiting elsewhere, allegedly unaware of the carnage taking place. After the murders, Rod and the group fled, driving across 4 states in an attempt to escape justice. But their journey came to an abrupt end when Charity Kesey, one of the clan members, called her grandmother for help. The police were tipped off and tracked the group to a hotel in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where they were arrested. Rod Farrell's trial made headlines, and he became the youngest person on death row in Florida at the time. His sentence was later reduced to life in prison without parole. The Vampire Clan's descent from role-playing games to blood rituals to cold-blooded murder showcases just how vulnerable young minds are to brainwashing. In 1989, the peaceful town of Altamira, Brazil, became a place of terror as young boys began to disappear without a trace. Over the next 4 years, a total of 19 boys vanished, none older than 15. 6 bodies were eventually found, each bearing the same gruesome mark. Castrated with surgical precision and abandoned to die in the dense jungle, 5 boys managed to escape, even after suffering similar horrific mutilations, and bravely went to the police. Yet despite their testimonies, the authorities took no action. For years, the powerful figures behind the disappearances remained untouchable, hiding in plain sight. It wasn't until 2003 that the truth finally emerged. The boys had been targeted by a cult known as the Superior Universal Alignment. Led by a woman in her 70s, Valentina de Andrade, the cult included doctors, a wealthy businessman, and even a police officer, each using their influence to evade justice for years. The cult members believed that children born after 1981 were inherently evil and needed to be exterminated. Their delusions went even further, claiming that the end of the world was imminent, and that a spaceship would soon arrive to take them to another planet. When they were finally arrested, the men received prison sentences ranging from 32 to 77 years. However, to the shock of many, Valentina de Andrade, the cult's leader, was acquitted of the murders, leaving many in Altamira haunted by the injustice. Right around the same time, in the state of Parana, located on the opposite side of the country, an equally disturbing cult was terrorizing southern Brazil. On the morning of April 6, 1992, in the town of Guaratuba, 6-year-old Evandro Ramos Caetano went missing while walking home from school. His sudden disappearance prompted a frantic search by locals and police, but for days, there was no sign of the boy. Finally, after more than a week, Evandro's body was found in a nearby forest, mutilated with several of his organs removed. The discovery horrified the nation, and whispers of ritualistic sacrifice quickly spread. Soon after, police arrested several high-profile suspects, including Selena and Beatriz Abaje, being the wife and daughter of the town's mayor. Along with several others, they were accused of witchcraft and being part of a secret occult group that had supposedly kidnapped and sacrificed Evandro as part of a black magic ritual intended to bring them power. The accusations were fueled by confessions from the suspects, which detailed horrific acts of ritual murder. However, controversy soon emerged around the investigation. Many of the suspects claimed they had been tortured by police into confessing to a crime they didn't commit. These allegations of brutality led to serious doubts about the legitimacy of the confessions and divided public opinion on whether the accused were truly guilty or innocent victims of a corrupt legal system. The case dragged on for years, with numerous trials, retrials, and appeals, as well as the longest jury deliberation in Brazilian criminal justice history. In the end, Beatriz was ultimately convicted and given 21 years. 3 other cult members, Oswaldo Marcinero, Davi dos Santos Soares, and Vicente de Paula, were also convicted. Additionally, some of the members confessed to the murder of 8-year-old Leandro Bossi, who went missing 2 months before Evandro. In February of 1993, the bones of a small child were found near the same spot Evandro's body was found. It wasn't until 2022 that authorities were able to confirm the remains were, indeed, that of Leandro Bossi. The Evandro case became one of Brazil's most infamous legal sagas, highlighting the dangers of false confessions, police misconduct, and the hysteria surrounding ritualistic crimes. Even after decades, the true story behind Evandro's death remains unclear, leaving a haunting mystery in Brazilian history. The witches of Guaratuba are believed to be responsible for the wave of child disappearances around the area during the late 80s and early 90s. In the mid-2000s, a dark chapter unfolded in the Russian town of Yaroslavl, where a group of troubled teenagers led by Nikolai Ogolobiak began sacrificing small animals in the name of Satan. Among the group, one member claimed that his life improved after they began these rituals, which ultimately fueled their descent into something far more sinister. By the summer of 2008, the cult had grown to 8 members, including Alexei Chistyakov, nicknamed Dead, Anton Makovkin, nicknamed Dr. Goth, and Alexander Voronov, who went by the name Hitler. The blood of slaughtered animals was used in the initiation of new members. Ogolobiak's sect of Satanists is a small offshoot of the much larger Order of Nine Angles. The O9A probably deserves its own video. But for this one, we are just focusing on the Russian faction of the Nine Angels. During the last week of June, over 2 separate nights, Ogolobyak and his cult lured teenagers Varya Kuzmina, Olya Pukova, Anya Gorokova, and Andrei Sorokin to a forest on the outskirts of the city. Once there, they forced the victims to drink alcohol and then launched a brutal attack. Nikolai and his crew proceeded to stab each victim with daggers, then decapitated them with a sword. According to witness testimonies, Ogolobyak would count off each time he would stab the victim until he reached the number 666. After dismembering the bodies, the victims' tongues and organs were cut out, fried, and eaten. Apparently, the blood of the victims was poured over Kara Kovaleva as part of her initiation ritual. Ultimately, they dumped the bodies in an area marked with an inverted crucifix. 2 months later, the bodies were discovered, and the authorities arrested 6 members of the cult. Nikolai Ogolobyak, as the ringleader, received the longest sentence of 20 years in prison. A 7th member was deemed unfit for trial due to mental health issues and was ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment. All of the members have since been released, including Ogolobyak, who was granted a pardon from Russian President Vladimir Putin for fighting in the Ukrainian war. In 2018, Russian teenager Ignat Sharapov set fire to the Dormition Church off Lake Onega in Karelia. The beloved church was built in 1774 by Catherine the Great and was considered a masterpiece of ancient Russian wooden architecture. Famed historian William Brumfield called the church one of the most remarkable wooden shrines in Russia. The 250-year-old marvel, which even survived the Finnish occupation during World War II, is sadly now a memory. The arsonist, Sharapov, expressed his support of the Legion Ava Satan and posted a picture of himself wearing a skull face mask, which is commonly associated with the neo-Nazi Atomwaffen division, as well as the Nine Angles. These tragic stories stand as a chilling reminder of how dark obsessions can influence young minds to commit the most heinous and unthinkable acts.